You say you're fine, but I can see right through. You're holding your secrets for way too long. This can't keep going on. With every lie, they keep on hurting you, getting away with everything they do. This can't keep going on. No, we're gonna find them, and I'm gonna fight for you. They better start hiding. We'll be running with the lions, lions. We'll be running with the lions, lions. They can't run, they can't hide. We won't stop until they're down. We'll be running with the lions, lions.
Hello, everyone, and happy Sunday. Welcome to another episode of Gloves Off. And I'm your host, Dr. Kalpana Sundar. And if you're new to the show, Gloves Off is a show about people who show up courageously and do what they love in this world. Sounds easy, but it's really not that easy because we get trapped in what society wants us to do. So we often just wind up conforming and doing what we're supposed to do instead of what we want to do. So Gloves Off came to me because it's that metaphorical taking your gloves, your ego off and showing up authentically. So each week I have a guest who has done exactly that. So last week was Labor Day, and I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday weekend. I was actually out of town and visiting some friends in Oregon, so it was lovely. And that's why I had the rebroadcast on with Wolfgang, who I'm going to have on the show next Sunday, because he had some real interesting changes since we last spoke to him. So I'm super excited to have him on next week. But in the interim, obviously, today our guest is Lauren, or like we like to call her, Lo Guerreri, who is the founder of House of Lo, a sanctuary for the soul. So we're going to be talking about that shortly and deep dive into a conversation with her. But before we get into all that, we obviously have to thank our sponsor, Elevated CPA, for continuing to support us every week. Alrighty, so I have something interesting to share. I actually told a woman at the gym today, she thought I was crazy because I told her I was going to Florida to escape the heat that's going on right now in San Diego. So we all know that people in San Diego love to complain about the weather when it's over 70, which it is right now. Today was like 86. So I went to the gym, and this is actually the gym where Lauren and I actually work out. We go to the same gym, and that's part of our little places where we cross paths a lot. But so we did a workout outside. It's called Grit. So it's weight training. And probably when I got there, it was a good 85 degrees. And of course, we're sweating like crazy. And, not only is the gym not air conditioned very well, but neither is most of San Diego, because people are used to really good weather. So when I said this, she thought I was nuts. But the thing is, it's crazy hot in Florida. But guess what? You always have AC wherever you go. So that's what I'm planning to do, escape the heat in Florida with AC. But I think the temperature is turning next week. So I don't know if that's such a great plan. So anyway, you guys are going to be excited to hear from Lauren. So she has been in the corporate business world for a really long time, and she's also an activator. She's a podcast host. She's an entrepreneur. She's a speaker. So she does all these different things. So we're going to really deep dive into this conversation because being a spiritual entrepreneur is very different from being an entrepreneur. There are a lot of different obstacles one faces. So we're going to talk about all that and more. So let's welcome Lo Guerreri to the show. Hello, welcome to Gloves Off.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here with you. What a treat on a Sunday evening.
Yes. Well, I hope you enjoyed my it's hot as heck here in San Diego story.
I roll my eyes. You know, I'm from the East Coast, so I'm like, they make me laugh sometimes. They wear Uggs here. I'm like, oh, sorry, what?
No, that's so funny. It's so true. It gets to be like 60 something and everybody's wearing like hats and like parkas. And I'm like, what?
Can't make it up. That's for sure.
So true. So true. Well, I'm so glad to have you on the show. I want to actually start with a couple of questions really about your former life in the corporate world. So let's start with that. I feel that's a great place to start.
Oh, thank you for that question. I love it. And I'm so excited to dive into everything today with you. You have just made such a beautiful impact on my life. So I'm so grateful for you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I feel the same way about you.
Life in corporate. Well, you know, this is obviously corporate America is one aspect of the business world globally, but so much of corporate America affects and runs the global world. And so in my experience, I uncovered a lot about just how the challenges in corporate and the things that everyone's more and more aware of the way things are, the things that are unspoken, the corruption, employees being mistreated, a lot of politics, just very, very old ways of doing business that need to fall away. That was a lot of my journey. You know, I'm an activist at heart. I am a change maker at heart. I'm a trailblazer. I'm a rebel. And so in any space I ever found myself in, I was always able to, which I didn't know at the time psychically, because I have such strong psychic gifts, I was always able to feel what was underneath what was being said. But you know, I have a master's in business and marketing, and I made my way up the corporate ladder to the highest levels of marketing as an executive. And I learned a lot in that world. You know, I have a very strong tenacity, perseverance, very ambitious, very determined. But I was determined in areas that you're not always rewarded for in those environments.
What do you mean exactly by that?
Change. I wanted to innovate and make a lot more changes, whether it was related to the work I was doing. I worked in-house for brands and on the digital ad agency side of things for 9 years. You know, I have 14 years in corporate. So I split it between working for brands and agencies. And I always was like the innovator in the room, or the one that was asking like the harder questions. And I'm not somebody that just falls in line at all. And that always, while I moved up, I was always met with a lot of opposition. And I felt that early on in my career, all the way up until the end. I was, you know, as a very strong, powerful woman who's tall with a low voice and who's curvy and all these things, I've always been, I stand out. For better or worse. And in corporate, a lot of what I was dealing with personally, where people would feel intimidated by me or triggered by me, I dealt with the same thing at a career level, on a professional level. And that was very, very painful for me as someone who's a big lover. I'm very powerful, but I'm also a very compassionate, heart-centered person, empathic, extremely empathic. And so I was betrayed a lot in corporate,
Mhm.
as well as personal. And so there was always a parallel between my personal life and what was going on professionally. And this is before my spiritual awakening. So I didn't know at the time how connected everything was, but it was. But I'm very good in business. I know a lot about the business world, and I'll always be in that world in some way. I have one business right now I'm starting up that's going back into corporate where I'm going to teach abundance consciousness. But throughout my career, while I did well, I performed well, I was struggling internally.
So I want to ask you a little bit about that. So I was laughing earlier and I didn't, it probably looks like to the audience that I'm laughing, but I was laughing at the parallels of what you were saying to my life. So I couldn't
Yep,
help but chuckle because I'm
yep,
like, you're a change maker, a rebel, all the things that, resonate with me as well.
yep.
And I want to just go back to something you said early when you started talking about corporate America and the corruption that's there and understanding that something's going on when you can't even sometimes put your finger on it. What
No.
I want to go back to that is so many people don't know there's so much corruption in their corporate environment. And like, for example, I know people that are given projects like last minute and they're working night and day to finish them.
Yes.
And,
100%.
sometimes they think that they don't have to necessarily do it, but if they didn't, then they wouldn't.
Right.
There is this expectation from corporate America that certain deadlines need to be, and I've seen this in so many corporate jobs. My son, when he was working for corporate, I mean, I've seen it in many, many places. We have learned to normalize this in our culture. And I
Yeah.
think that's part of what you're striving to make changes about. But we've normalized it so much, even in medicine, it's the same thing. We've normalized this, 90, 100-hour work weeks. It has to stop.
It has to stop. Oh, so well said, Kalpana. And I think at the end of the day, for me, I witnessed a lot of very cutthroat moves that were very
Mhm.
unnecessary. Watching the CFO and the executives make a decision to lay off hundreds of people to make themselves look profitable so they can report to Wall Street quarterly that they're profitable when it's all bullshit. Dare I
Mhm.
say on this show? I don't know if you can swear, but for
Oh, it's
me,
fine. It's gloves off. You can do whatever you want.
that's what I figured. That's what I figured. Let's go. Let's go. Um, and just watching some of these things and watching a lot of my colleagues and friends getting laid off unnecessarily for greed. There's a lot of politics, like mostly what disenchanted me or really broke my heart, I should say, because I'm an eternal optimist, and I'm a warrior in that way, much like you, right? But what really broke my heart was the lack of accountability at the highest levels and the lack of heart and empathic leadership at the highest levels. And
Right.
also the way people would turn on you on a dime if it benefited them. And this was not just men. There's a lot of books and research on women at the highest levels will step on other women
Oh,
because there's
100%.
there's only so many slots for women and people of color at the top right now. And
Right.
so there's very cutthroat energy across all the entire industries and spectrum. And so for me, I knew that I was a born entrepreneur since I was young. My parents are entrepreneurs. I should have did it a long time ago, but my journey went the way it went. But I always was running side businesses my whole career. I had my own consulting on the side. I did a million businesses on the side. I had a whole business set up and I left corporate because I got some shares and the divine really delivered enough money to me, just enough, a year's salary and some shares I got when this company I worked for sold. And I left in 2021. And then that year I made double what I ever made in corporate, manifesting abundance through my own business with my manifestation gifts. And so that changed everything for me. And I think if people are wondering about the timing of their lives, it truly is all in perfect divine time. I know our human doesn't always understand that, but for me, when as we all know, hindsight is so clear in 2020. And for me, when I look back, it was the perfect time. And I know everything's meant to be. And I was supposed to get that really like on the ground experience in corporate. And now I can go back into that world through my own business and mission and have a real impact. But I understand it. And I
Right.
think the way purpose manifests is we have to understand and have experienced some of what we're here to teach, if not all of it.
Oh, 100%. Now, I want to go back one more step. I'm sorry. I want to expand on
Okay.
a couple of things you said because they're really, really important points. So, when you're talking about the corporate culture lacking empathy, I also feel that the corporate structures really commoditize fear in their employees to really get them to do a lot of different things. And I do feel that this is something I've been thinking about a lot. Just the fact that you're able to start up your own business and do something on your own gives you so much leverage
Yeah.
against that. And I just thought to myself, because why have I never been fearful of those things? Because I know I can just create another income stream. And I've done it so many times.
Yeah.
So because they put you in this fear position, they almost create this scenario where you have nothing else. So that's why you're kind of forced to work these hours, provide these things, because you're afraid. At the very core, fear is the easiest way to control a population or any organization. So I say this because I know what you stand for about the fear and the scarcity and the abundance. And we kind of touched on that, but I just wanted to tie it all together so you can talk about how you manifested your abundance.
Thank you for that beautiful setup and context. The whole economy is built on fear and scarcity. And so the businesses are just operating within the current structure and systems they've been born into, energetically and physically. And the humans running them, running every business, are in the same fear and scarcity. So the business itself is an entity. Every business is a consciousness in and of itself. The employees, they're plugged into this consciousness of every company or business or
Mm.
brand. Then you have the individuals that are running it and their programming and their thinking and their beliefs. And that's why there's a redistribution of power right now. And there's a real call for changes in structures in corporate and any company, the companies I'm running, the companies you're running. We have to think so thoughtfully about structure because the human ego is designed to be in fear and it's designed for survival. So what it equally will do is it will fall into the trap of thinking it has power when it doesn't, meaning thinking it has power over another. So we have power within us. That's my whole brand. You have a spark of the divine in you. That's your soul that powers your body. But to think that the small self, the false self, the wounded self, the ego, thinks it has power over others when it gets to a certain level with a certain amount of resources, money, and power. Right. And so that is just human nature. This has been proven time and time again since a lot of years on Earth. And now we're at a very, very intense, very real tipping point
Mhm.
of it's all falling, towers all over the world, all over every industry, tower moments upon tower moments, and they're going to keep coming. And the economic system as we know it is going to keep evolving and changing. And some of it's going to dismantle, which people don't like to hear, but of course it is. Because what will get people to change? Money. Money is part of the way the earth realm is structured. Now, money is a neutral energy, and I'm going to transition into abundance and I'm going to answer your question full circle. Money itself has been demonized on purpose, yet everyone requires it for their mission here and for survival and thriving. See, my mission is to get us out of survival into thriving. Right. And the reason people won't follow their joy and some of the things you and I know in the spiritual space that we're really pushed to do, especially the higher realms, they push everybody to follow their joy, is because people think that there are structures still in place where it's impossible sometimes to follow your joy and make money. But that's what's changing. Okay. And people are starting to manifest money alongside or for something that is bringing them so much joy that's also contributing to their community and the world at large. And that's where people are like, whoa, this is not what I thought. So my mission is quite big, and I'm one of many people on earth doing this. I can't do this all myself, although I do believe that any one of us can change this planet. And I think that's an important point. A lot of people think sit back and don't do anything, whatever the cause is or whatever the issue is, because
Mhm.
they think, well, who am I? What am I going to do? But yet, when we look at these big, even some of the ones that we might argue are good or for better or worse, Steve Jobs is one man. A lot of people worked behind him on those products,
Of
but
course.
his vision, psychotically, people thought he was nuts. People think I'm nuts. That's what brought it to market, and it changed everything, right? And
Well,
so
his quote, "Here's to the misfits, the crazy ones,
that's
the I always related to that quote. I
Me
was like,
too.
oh, everybody thinks I'm crazy, but
I'm
I'm
a
going to
misfit.
do something that makes a difference. So,
And
yeah.
listen, every figure that ever did anything like that is controversial, and he was. And I
Hmm.
I don't put these people on pedestals. But what I
Hmm.
do think about when I think about what keeps me going is knowing there's a chance I could spark a movement on this planet in any one direction.
Hmm.
And some of the darkest movements in history where really bad things happened started from one person. I think we forget that. So one person can quite literally change the world, 100%. And I believe that. And I believe the spark that's in me, my soul, has the potential to do that. I believe yours does. And there's certain, as you know, we call us light workers, light warriors. There's a lot of souls on earth right now that are very ancient, that know a lot about, unity, consciousness, oneness, abundance. And we came back to earth during this time when the earth is shifting massively to more love consciousness, over fear consciousness, abundance consciousness over scarcity consciousness. And a lot of us came back to contribute to that global earth-wide shift that is happening, whether people like it or not.
And I love that. I love that you went into all of that because these are such important points. And again, when we think we can't do these things, again, I feel it's all about fear, societal conditioning, and probably really just a way to keep us aligned in our little lane of doing some corporate job and not really
Right,
following our mission or following what our
right.
soul knows. Because
Yep.
at the end of the day, I believe my soul has always known what it was here for. Maybe it wasn't crystal clear when I was 3, but it did know that I was here to do something, and it still knows that, just like yours does. And we're not the only ones. That's what really the message I want to get out there is that it's not just a few of us. There are a lot of us out there, a lot of people out there who have their own unique gifts to give to the world.
Yeah.
But if they're trapped and being stuck in fear consciousness, it won't ever expose itself.
That's right. That's so well said. I am somebody that's here to speak truth, to everyone in any endeavor I do, but I'm definitely here to speak truth to power. And I'm very grateful that I have a soul that is very fearless. And I say I was born that way. And my parents used to be like, God, this kid is not afraid of anything. I was like, I don't need to hold your hand. I'm 4 years old walking across the street. They're like, no, 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 come back. So I don't say that to be dramatic. I quite literally feel very little fear. I just do. I've just been on this planet a lot, like hundreds of thousands of times. So I'm aware of the same history repeats itself. And my soul remembers and knows it's the same thing it was in ancient Greece, in ancient Egypt, in the Romans, in the 1400s, in the 1700s, in the 1800s. It's the same shit. It's greed and power over love and abundance. It's
Yeah.
greed and power and scarcity and fear. And there's a lot of like beliefs and systems that go back so far. I know you and I have talked personally about the ancestral lineages that were the cycles were breaking, right? And the ancestors that aren't here anymore, they're cheering us all on, saying from the other side, please do not repeat our cycles. They didn't work. Did you notice? And so for me, when I boil this down to like, what is abundance consciousness? I'm sure some people are like, well, what do you mean by abundance? Because certainly if you look it up, it's all about money, 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 like everything is. But abundance is a frequency. It's an energetic state of mind where you truly believe, know, and understand that there is plenty for everyone to survive and thrive and meet their needs and meet their desires. Okay. Abundance comes from the divine. So what I teach, we bypass the matrix, we bypass every single system in the current systems we live within that feel limited, right? People feel limited in corporate. They feel limited in our world. They feel limited in America. They feel limited in every country they're in, poor or rich, it doesn't matter. Everyone is feeling, and again, this is a false program that there's limits. There actually isn't. Okay. And so part of the challenge that the human mind struggles with is because the mind is designed to orient to the past, to what it's already experienced, right? So the mind cannot conceive of things being limitless, meaning our possibilities, options, things we can potentially create in this lifetime. That's why we have to your point earlier, drop into the heart. Our soul is inside our heart. So if people want to know what runs their body, it's the soul inside the heart. You can be brain dead, you cannot be heart dead. You understand? The heart is the number one part of this body because the soul is inside of it. And so when people go through these crises, divorce, health crisis, someone cheats, business fails, gets fired, laid off, whatever. All of a sudden, the spiritual awakening begins, or they start to look up or wherever they look and they go, something that I can't see, please guide me. I don't know what's happening. But what I'm urging people to hear me now when I say we don't need to wait for those things to happen, to start connecting to God and connecting to our soul inside of us, and to start creating our lives based on what we actually desire and who we actually are versus who we were told to be and what we were told was possible.
And I love that you just said that because, I guess they're called tower moments, right? Like
Oh,
they say the divine feminine whispers and the divine masculine knocks you on your ass.
boom.
So
That's right.
when you hear the whispers, and I can tell you in my own life that there were whispers over and over again. You got to get out of medicine. You got to follow your heart. You have a bigger mission. I was hearing those whispers for a long time and I didn't do anything about it. So like tower things kept happening. And finally I was like, I just got to do this, and I finally just bravely was able to just leave and do what I wanted to do. But so many people are trapped in that fear and they just watch the things happen around them, one bad thing after another, things to show them that they, shouldn't be worried about this or that, but they are because they're stuck in a paradigm within the matrix that they cannot get out of.
You just said it. You just
Yeah.
said the whole thing.
And I have often said, this is probably a silly analogy, but I think it would make sense to a lot of people. Life is like a video game in many ways. Once you understand that you're not in this matrix, we actually have power. And I joke because in many video games that I played, and I'm just going to date myself because I started playing video games when Atari came out. So I know it was a long time ago, but so they weren't as creative as they are now. But I used to love playing Galaga. And in that game, I just remembered that, the each layer of the game got harder and harder. Then all of a sudden there was an easy stage. And then there was a challenging stage, but it was actually easy where you could just get bonus points. I feel life is a lot like that. You go through these challenges, it gets harder and harder and harder. But I feel like once you reach that spiritual awakening place, that's where things, I don't want to say they're always easy because it's not like you get to spiritual awakening, things are easy, but I just do believe that there is a flow in that space. Not necessarily easy because, like you said, we have to often learn some hard lessons because we can't teach or inspire if we haven't been through those things. Yeah. So I think that, it is in a way, something I can equate to a video game where at least when you get far enough, like you've already learned all those lessons of what not to do, what to do, that the navigating becomes a little easier most of the time.
So well said. I couldn't agree more.
I don't know if you agree with that analogy, and if you don't, I'm happy to hear. But that's just the way I see it, to simplify it for people maybe who are not so used to the spiritual talk.
Absolutely. Earth is a video game for our soul, meaning there's levels, there's lessons. The whole reason our soul comes into this temporary body is to learn lessons on this plane. The Earth plane is the only level in the cosmos, if you will, that has this wide spectrum of emotions. Our soul only knows love and light in the higher realms. So when it comes into this body, it experiences what's called duality, dark and light, shadow and light. Right. And so the soul is actually very interested in overcoming things like depression, despair, fear, scarcity, trauma from obviously events, like things happen that give our soul that playing field to navigate. And the soul comes into this body to get to know itself. It chooses the body it comes in. It gets to know a version of itself, right? My soul is not just this body. It's been in many bodies, and it's not a gender either. Our soul is genderless. And so our soul is from the divine. We are made of God. We are God. It's really that simple. And so once we awaken to a certain level, we start to work with our emotions and we start to work with the different experiences we're given. And I know you and I have learned a lot in our own spiritual journey about how everything around us is a mirror. And so to amplify your example around how it is a video game down here, which it is, and the thing is, in order to outcreate the matrix, you can't play within it. meaning you can't be a victim to it. How do you overcome any level in a video game? You persevere and fight, and you really usually use tools that are outside of what you thought you had to use, and you overcome the levels. Okay. You get creative. And so, for me, I am very interested in people remembering their power. And I want to really talk about this part. Power comes from your soul, which comes from God. Now, there's a very big difference between like living from our soul and living from our mind. And I'm not even going to say the ego, because the mind is not bad. The mind is just logically looking at things from a very narrow perspective, which sometimes that's useful. Obviously, logic comes into play sometimes.
Right.
But to be honest, most of the time it keeps us limited, right? Logically, I should have probably stayed in corporate. I'd be making probably 800 grand a year by now. So
You're like,
so,
can I
like,
do it again?
logically, I'm 35. I should have kids by now, but I don't yet because my journey's different and it stands out. So people are being asked to remember their soul, remember their power, to tune into that however it makes sense to them, and to make like the question for everyone to really think about is, what does it look like to make decisions from my heart? What does it feel like to drop into my heart? And that is often where the answers, as we all know and learn, lie, and the heart doesn't lie, and it's often very simple. See, the mind complicates things. That's what's funny to me. Our culture says be logical, yet the mind to me overcomplicates everything. The
100%.
heart is very simple.
I stopped listening to that thing a while ago.
Right.
I was like,
And when
stop.
you're in these jobs or these businesses or these marriages or these relationships or your routines and your health, like the way you treat your body is not good. You tune into your heart and your heart goes, yep, that needs to change. Like, it's so clear. Or like, if you even emotions, again, we can't demonize our emotions. Our emotions are information, and they are quite literally energetic frequencies flowing through our body trying to tell us something. And so when people tune it, see, the thing is, Kalpana, you and I are very self-aware. We've always been very interested in growth. We're interested in having an epic life this lifetime. A lot of people don't push themselves. A lot of people don't want to sit in stillness and silence and ask themselves, am I happy in fill in the blank? Because if they do, they already know the answer. Am I happy in this relationship? People are so afraid to look at their relationships and say, should I even stay in this? Because they already know they shouldn't. The answer is clear. Or the job, or fill in the blank. And so we avoid, we numb out, we escape, we distract ourselves. We tell ourselves this is probably as good as it's going to get. We tell ourselves this is all I deserve. And boom, you end up in something that
you must be speaking some sort of truth, because I never cough. I'm like, oh my God, all of a sudden I'm
sorry, babe.
very activated. I'm like, what in the world?
Because I know you and I have made very hard decisions that nobody understood from our heart, from asking those very hard questions.
Yeah.
And I will never regret those decisions. I know they were required. I still don't know exactly how my life's going to all land at the end of the day, but I'm down for the ride. It's a roller coaster on purpose here. My spirit guides always, when I channel, I always hear strap on, like strap in. Literally, the harness is on and you cannot get off. Like, you have to ride the different waves, and you go over here and then you're over here and then there's a pivot and then you're upside down all of a sudden and then you're smooth sailing all of a sudden. Like, it's this life is not easy on this planet. It's meant to be challenging. We are moving into a time on earth when things are going to be much more easy and joyful, and there won't be so much turmoil. But a lot of us here are the first generation cycle breakers of these ancestral lineages that lived in fear, embodied scarcity, and we're being asked to do the very opposite. And so some of the heaviness people feel is the ancestral patterns that we're breaking. It's true.
So I want to just talk about, like life on earth just being difficult. So I just want to make a comparison. Life, everything is difficult, and we have to choose our hard. So working a corporate job is hard. Being an entrepreneur is hard. It's
Yep.
all hard. You just got to choose your hard. So, meaning if you want to be healthy or unhealthy, they're both hard. You just choose your hard. So, because I hear a lot of people, they say, oh, well, I can't, it's like scary,
Right.
blah, blah, blah.
Right.
It's all hard. You
Right.
just choose your hard. And so, I think so much of that is, again, our conditioning and whatnot. And then I want to go back to something you were talking about earlier about, the spirit guides and all that. So I want to clearly, you have access to a lot of things, including your psychic abilities. So can you tell us a little bit about how that came out, or when did you realize it in your life? How did you learn to know what it was, and all that? That's always an interesting conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate the space to talk about this. I, this is most people have intuition or intuitive gifts. Some people are not meant to be very aware of them in this lifetime, and some people are meant to fully awaken to their psychic intuitive gifts and use them because it's actually going to help their mission in this life. Everyone comes here with a mission. Everyone.
Mhm.
Everyone comes with a mission. Some people's mission is simply to learn motherhood. Other people's mission, like mine, is to do all of that, to be a mother, to be a very well-known speaker, to have a huge business, to have an incredible marriage, and to be able to walk the earth plane while being so connected to all the other higher realms. That is what I have to live every day. I have one hand in the higher realms and one hand on this planet all day, every day, whether I like it or not, whether my human accepts it or not. And believe me, my human still to this day struggles with it. It requires enormous amounts of grounding, discernment, protection, clearing. We've laughed about that. So when I was young, very young, I'm talking 4 years old, I knew I was an old soul and I knew I'd been here a million times. I was like, oh yeah, here we are again. I was born eyes wide open. Came out of my mother's womb and the eyes were open and I wasn't crying. I was just like this. So old ass soul. No need to cry. I remember. So that's like a joke, but it's very true. And it's exactly.
But our soul is here to remember
That's
what
right.
it is, right?
That's right.
So you just kind of showed up a lot ahead
I
of
did.
everybody, and just sort of knew.
Yeah, and a lot of my there's a 4 different psychic gifts, and then there's a few others, but the main ones are clairsentient. You feel, so you have the ability. I know you have this. You have the ability to feel other people's emotions, feelings. You can feel what's not being said. Even if it's not being said, you can feel it. You can feel, like, you can look at someone who's smiling and know they're sad. You can walk into a room and know you got to get out of there because there's some not good energy in there, right? Or you talk to someone and they seem great, but your body alarm bells. The clairsentient gift I have potently, and it is very difficult because you feel everything. All I want to do, I have to actually like carve out a lot of time to be alone so I can just discern my own energy apart from the world and walking down the street and other people's. You pick up on a lot. Clairaudient, you hear. So you can hear God, your higher self, your spirit guides, your ancestors, any and all beings of light or not, you have to discern, you can hear. And yes, it sounds like your own thoughts a little bit, but the voice is different and it often comes from the back of your head. You can feel, and you can't trace it. It usually just, it just drops in. Your thoughts are up here and they're linear. I want a glass of water. Oh, I got to eat dinner. Oh, Kalpana, a conversation with her at 6. Our thoughts are like, the downloads from up there, they come through and they're much more embodied. You feel it. And then your human is like, uh-oh, what did I do? Clairvoyant, you see. The way clairvoyant, so I have all 4. So there's clairvoyant and claircognizant. Clairvoyant this is how I describe it to people. I'm sitting here with you. If I were to get a clairvoyant vision, all of a sudden it would be like a movie screen came over my vision and I would see it. And you'd be there, but you'd be like behind it. It's almost like a green screen comes in front of me and I see the vision. Claircognizant is you just know. You don't know how you know, but you know. You don't have a feeling, you don't hear, you don't see, you just know it. So when I was young, I lived with clairsentience, very young, clairaudient a little bit. And then later when my spiritual awakening began when I was like 27 to 29, Saturn return. And my clairaudient, clairvoyant, and claircognizant gift has blasted open, but I always had clairsentient. So I'll pause there for a second, but that's what I live with. Yeah.
Whew, it's a lot, I will say. I understand. I to a degree. I don't have all of them open yet, but the clairsentience I've had ever since I could remember, and also the claircognizance I've had ever since I can remember. I remember when there was a town that I lived in, and there was this couple, and everybody loved them, and I was like, something's up. The house of cards is gonna calm down. And people were like, you're crazy, blah, blah, blah. Well, a couple of years later, what happened was, it was a physician. He was actually arrested for dealing narcs. And I knew it. I had no way to know that. I just knew something was up, and I just couldn't figure it out. So I've had that. I have a little bit of a clairaudience,
Yep.
clairvoyance sometimes. Those ones are not fully open. So
Yeah,
I know that it's difficult for me with just those, let alone having everything open on full blast.
totally.
So
Thank you.
it's a real thing. And so I know there are probably people in our audience who don't believe any of this stuff, So I want to ask you, how you would, because, and I think the reason they don't is because there are a lot of people out there who will say a lot of things, and for like, there are people out there doing it for a lot of money and blah, 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 is telling people's fortunes, whatever. And often those things don't come true. So people stop believing. And
Yes.
unfortunately, it's like in any field, there are always these people who don't do the right things, and there are people who
Yes.
do. How does a layperson differentiate the scammers from the real deals?
Thank you. That is the $1 million question, isn't it? First of all, I want to preface this by saying a lot of people have these gifts. It does not mean that the people using these gifts are healed themselves. We don't know what their protection practices are. There's energy flying around the cosmos from every direction, of the dark and of the light. Okay. And so it is up to the practitioner of these gifts, the holder of these gifts, to be a proper and responsible and loving steward of these gifts. And our intention, I'm still human, right? Everybody with these gifts is human. We're very advanced and we're very connected to the divine. However, if we're not healed, the way we use these gifts is a reflection of that. If our intention in our heart for either tuning into somebody else, for somebody else, reading for them, tuning into the energy or their future, whatever you want to call it, if we don't have a good intention in our heart, some people are power hungry with these gifts. The same themes we talked about earlier, people with psychic gifts, it doesn't matter. They're still human on this plane. Their soul is in a human body. And the soul and the human are often at war in this body. Okay. The soul is going, get out of that marriage. Do not marry that person. And the human is like, but society, but my dad, but my culture. Okay. So there is a war going on all the time. So then you throw a bunch of psychic gifts on top of that, and we got to be careful. So I say this, people can believe whatever they want. My intentions are extremely pure, which is why I hid these gifts for so long. Now I'm publicly open about them. I have to be. My soul is pushing me because I have to be. I'm here to channel on stage speaking, and the divine uses my vessel to speak very potent messages, as you've witnessed, to people. And some of these messages, my mission is definitely for people to remember they're a soul and a body, to be empowered, to remember their power to create their life, co-create with the divine, to feel limitless in a limited form, to be wealthy and happy, and to find love, and to find their tribe and their community. Like, I want the absolute best for everyone, and I see it's possible for everyone. To answer one question you had, one thing you mentioned about, like, if things don't come true. So when people are reading, they're reading energy, and so we're able to tune into energy of possibilities or people that are meant to come into one's life, or choices you might be faced with. We can see timelines. So for example, I might see a timeline where I'm going to use a simple one, but like, you stay in San Diego or you leave, and I can see both timelines. And now this is already assuming, when I'm tuning in for you, if you're doing a more formal reading with me, set up protection. We're working with only beings of the light. I am somebody who is a vessel. I am a channel, meaning when I open up and give consent, it's your higher self actually channeling through me, talking to you. It's not Lauren. It might look like Lauren, but it's not Lauren. And that's how it feels, because the stuff that comes through me when I'm channeling and using my psychic gifts, my brain would never say. My human would never say the words the way they say them, or the visions. I would never be able
Okay.
to just come up with that from my
So that's
imagination.
how you can tell that it's not you
I know
inside your own being.
it's a feeling.
Yeah. And I get that because I've had channeled messages come through too,
Yeah,
and I can tell they are not of my own.
yeah,
So just going back to the timeline thing, because I think this is where people get confused, and me included. So something was told, it didn't come through, meaning that there's multiple timelines. We also have free will.
yep.
We could have chosen a different avenue and a different timeline.
That's right. And then, so all that's right. And then there's one other exception. So people struggle with believing in destiny. I think a lot of people are conflicted with, is destiny a thing? Are things pre-planned? Are they fated? How much of this is free will and how much of this is destiny? And I'm going to give you my answer that I've been shown time and time again, and it's relevant for my own life path, which I'm on a wild journey that is all destiny. And I've had to be brought back on it many times because my human runs from it. And my soul is like, no, this is your destiny. Don't you try to run from it. Our destiny stalks us. That's the energetics of it. Like, you'll keep being poked with it. Like, no, that person is your person, or this is your career and your purpose. You're not meant to do that. Or it'll keep stalking you. And so what I will tell you is,
I love that.
Yes. Destiny is the fixed milestones in your life path along the way that are unmovable. They cannot be moved, immovable, whatever that word is. They cannot be moved. They are going to happen one way or the other. Free will is the human decisions we make that get us there faster or longer.
Ooh.
Free will is if you follow your soul, because your free will is choosing to follow your soul or your human. The free will is just the cloak that's over Earth. So the entire planet has free will. If people want to know why God can't come down and stop all the wars, it's because this planet has free will. The whole planet does.
Yeah, exactly.
God can stop there would be no war. These planets all are sovereign in and of themselves. And that's why individually we're sovereign and we have free will. And so we can do anything. God still loves us, but we can do anything we want here, technically.
And I, if you've ever read Conversations with God, I feel like that they give, so to our audience, the audience, if you want to deep dive into that, you can listen to Conversations with God on YouTube. It explains so much of this, and it's a fascinating read or audio book to listen to. Anyway, so I digress, but I thought that was worth mentioning. But I think that is one of the best explanations I've ever heard, because I really have struggled with understanding that myself. And this makes a lot of sense, because if even just in my very own life and yours, you can probably make that analogy of when there were fixed points to your destiny and when you chose to follow your human as opposed to your soul, and everything took longer. So that makes complete sense to me.
It's so true. And the other thing that I want to explain a bit, because I've gone to the ends of the earth, and I will forever in this life, to understand how it works here so I can better help myself and other people. Because there is an order to everything. There's not a logic to the divine, but there's a divine order to everything, and the way the divine and spirit moves through everything on this planet and moves through other people. Like you and I both know, the divine has worked through both of us for each other's lives. We came into each other's lives to help each other in certain areas. And the divine is just working through me to bring you what you need. And the divine's working through you to bring you what I need. So on this planet, we need other people. We're here to be in union. We're here to be in community. We are not built to be isolated on this planet. No. That's what makes us think we're separate from God, when we know that's an illusion, right? Everything starts from separation. The illusion of separation. I'm separate from God. Therefore, I'm separate from these other beings that kind of look like me, and we kind of have the same body. And so I'm going to destroy everything in my path. That is what creates darkness on this planet. That's an illusion. But destiny, remember, your soul planned a whole movie down here, and your human forgot it all so it could live out the movie. There is an order to your life. Your life path was planned by your very own soul that's in that body. And then it came into the body and forgot it all so it could experience itself and it. The soul comes to earth and can very tangibly, in physical form, experience God, experience source. So this cup is source. You know, this candle is source. You are source. I am source. So it's like the soul has this very rich experience on the earth plane because everything's in physical form. Okay.
Right.
So the emotions are part of the experience. Our soul loves the emotions. Our human resists it because it's so intense to feel. But the soul is like, that's where the soul loves to dance, right? The soul does not want to be numbed out working at a computer from 9 to 5. I promise you that. And so, um, yeah, no. And so the soul wants to have ice cream and have sex, like we've talked about.
My soul wants all kinds of things.
That's what the soul would like to do. So destiny is real. And if people want hope, I would like to offer them this. Your soul had a plan. Your life is it. And you're being asked to make the choices that you've been desiring to make, that you're afraid to make. And once you take the leap, everything is going to fall into place. That was channeled. That was meant for somebody or some people watching this. People need hope on this planet more than ever. And you know, I live very connected to the higher realms, to your point earlier, and I'm very grounded on the earth plane. I was just laying at the park before our call on the grass, like, ground me to this planet. I was playing basketball, like, ground me to this planet, you know, because everybody is aware of like how you can get really high up and you have to come back down to earth. And even in the body, you have to get grounded in your body. And I feel very grounded even in this moment. And it's little things that help us. We talk about that all the time. Walking, being in nature is really all you got to do. But for me, because I have such a deep connection to the higher realms, I live with less and less fear, like truly, because
it does make a big difference, because I went through a period where I was sort of just recently where I was kind of cut off from all the things I normally feel. I felt more fearful than I ever have.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then I read somewhere that happens from time to time, because maybe you're supposed to get quiet within yourself. But the whole thing freaked me the hell out, to be honest with you. I was like, I've lost connection with everybody. Now what?
I know that feeling well.
And I'm sure some people are watching this going, this is crazy talk, right? You know, but
yeah, and I mean,
it's just a different perspective outside of the matrix that we're not really privy to, a lot of us, unless we wind up like learning about it or whatever. So the reality is that the bottom line is anything could be possible. Just because we don't know about it or understand it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. We can't see it doesn't mean it exists. And I'm a scientist. I'm a physician. I mean, I am grounded in science. And yet there are things that we're seeing in physics and, you know, frequencies and all that very accurately explain in scientific terms what we are talking about now. So for all the non-believers out there, you can actually look up all this stuff and find rational supporting data on this, which is probably when I started to believe more, just because of my science background. Like, some of it just seemed a little woo-woo to me. But I also realized that just when I thought something was not possible, I saw that things were possible, and I saw it. And it's just crazy how life just shows you those things. So anyway, but I digress. But I want to kind of, you know, we're running out of time. I can't believe how fast that went. Tell us a little bit more about House of Lo, because although it's a sanctuary for the soul and we really got into the backstory, we didn't really talk about that. So I want you to have a few minutes to talk about that.
Thank you, babe. I appreciate that. Yes, House of Lo is my company. So right now I have an arm of the business where I'm a public speaker. So I speak at events. I do my own events. I'm available for speaking opportunities. I also do sessions, abundance activation sessions. They're 60 minutes where I channel for people the best moves for them to make, or areas of their life that they really are calling in more abundance, not just money, but of course money. I do events. And then I also have a corporate arm of my business where I am going into companies, small, medium, large, from all the way to startups, all the way to corporate, and teaching abundance consciousness. And really, this is for the benefit of the employees, for a better working environment, better management, and working with the executives and leadership, and really working with, you know, we're not going in there and talking about God. Like, we're going in and talking about creativity, manifestation, energetics. I can tune into the consciousness of a business and help it make more money. That's one of my gifts. Okay.
great. I mean, that is such a wonderful thing because
Yeah,
there's so much that's missing in our
right.
corporate structures and corporate environments on this, where people are just kind of like robots, just working
Totally,
on computers day in and
totally.
day out, having all these different conversations, but there's no heart and no soul in it.
Yeah,
And that's why I think I've always worked for myself, because I couldn't work for these companies that were all profit oriented and there was no heart and soul. When I build something that I build, it has a heart and a soul, but there also has to be profit. Like I can be in all those realms at once.
100%, 100%. And, that's one of my biggest passions is if I can impact the business world with these ways of being and higher levels of consciousness so that the whole company is more on mission, I will gladly die happy. And also, one of the things I'm doing in that arm of my business is I'm helping companies discover the soul of their business and
Hmm.
or restore the soul. So, like, I'm helping individuals with their soul work. I'm
Mhm.
going into corporate because every business has a soul, but
Yeah.
some of them have lost sight of the soul or never even tuned into the soul. And that's the consciousness. And then that starts to permeate the whole company. Employees are happier, profits are up, management is happier and doing a better job of cultivating the talent and the employees, and helping them grow. Management's growing, leadership's happy, and it's one big kumbaya circle. And like, I'm that much of a believer of what I'm here to teach. I channeled a methodology. So like the divine isn't stupid. This isn't going to be like, I'm going in, all right, kumbaya. This is like very grounded methodology
Yep.
using these spiritual principles,
Yep.
and it's going to have a huge impact. So I would love an invitation to talk to your company, or I would love to work with people individually.
And I love that, because if those of you who are watching don't know what that really means, you can feel the difference between a corporation that has a soul and one that doesn't. I personally don't buy or do business with anything that I don't believe has a soul. I'm a very good steward of my own money and where it goes. So if people are having unsustainable, if companies are have unsustainable practices or terrible with their employees, there are a
Oof,
couple of companies I won't use just because I know how the employees are treated.
yeah.
I will not spend my money there, and that's the way. That's the only way that I know to not have them thrive.
That's right.
It's like whatever. But yes, like there are companies who you can just feel the pulse, you can feel the soul, and that's what we need to get back
Well
to
said.
have this world be better. So, on that, I thank you for sharing all of this deep conversation and all the things that you've been through and your channel messages and all of that. And we're just grateful for you to bring all this to, because I think this is the first conversation I've had like this on Gloves Off. So I really, really appreciate it. And I'm so glad that we were able to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Dr. Kalpana. I am beyond grateful for you and this opportunity. Thank you to your audience and everyone who gave us their time and energy. I'm so honored and grateful for this invitation. And if anyone is interested in talking, I would love for you to reach out. So
Yes,
thank you.
and
I
her
appreciate you.
the website is on the ticker below. I'll leave it on actually as I'm closing out with my closing comments so they can still see it. All right. Have a great night, Lo. Thank you for being here. Bye.
Bye.
Well, I'm like, should be the whole screen, but technical difficulties. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope that was an insightful discussion for you, because it was for me. I mean, I learned things that I didn't know and expanded on some knowledge that I already had. So for me, it was such an insightful discussion. So next week, we are going to have Wolfgang on, as I mentioned earlier in this show, at the beginning of the show. If for those of you who watched that episode or who watched the rebroadcast last weekend, he had this moment, a breakthrough moment about his mother when we were on air. And in that moment, he actually said he wants to invite his mother to dinner and have this discussion with her, which I don't want to get into all the details because I'll spoil all the fun of the show. But also since then, he's gone to sort of a pilgrimage to his roots in Italy. So he is going to have to share more about that with us. So that's what that show is going to be all about. So I really want you guys to tune in. Thank you for being open-minded and listening to this today. And if you guys know anybody who would be interested in watching the show, I'm going to stick this up on the screen just for a minute. This is the QR code. If you are interested, you can always see reruns of the show that episodes that have already been aired on my YouTube channel. So that's the perfect way that you could find me there. And otherwise, I hope you guys have a lovely, lovely evening. And I can't wait to see you next week for another episode of Gloves Off.